So if you are my age, I guess, or somewhere near my age, and I'm aging myself right now, but you might remember a, a band called DC Talk, and one of their songs is called Jesus Freak. And that is what I titled today's devotion. Today is day 76 of 365 days, and we are on March the 17th. And today's morning rinse is Ezekiel 4 through 6. So go ahead and read that and come on back. Featured verse today is Ezekiel 4:4. As for you, lie down on your left side and lay the iniquity of the house of Israel on it. You shall bear their iniquity for the number of days that you lie on it. Ezekiel is a book, admittedly so, that's in the Bible where as you're reading it, it can actually be kind of difficult to find the relevance of Ezekiel for today's lifestyle. And some may even look at things that Ezekiel did and call him a Jesus freak. When reading this book, there is going to be times where we need to dig deep for messages that might not necessarily jump right out at us. And this is certainly how we get nuggets from the Lord. Just surface reading is great, but and that's typically the surface reading of when you're in that mission and when you're in the goal of reading the Bible through in a year, which I have friends who have never been on the journey of reading the Bible through in a year. But even though reading the Bible through in a year, you kind of surface read, and yet you can still get so many good golden nuggets out of it. And so some of the messages might not necessarily jump out at us, and this is certainly how we get nuggets from the Lord when we kind of do a little deeper dive. And today's morning rinse, for instance, it's got several examples of really odd things that God asked Ezekiel to do that we may never be asked to perform in our lifetime. In fact, I think Ezekiel probably in all of the Bible was asked to do some very strange things. They're great conversation pieces, and certainly I plan on talking to Ezekiel about them when I get to heaven. It's kind of one of the guys that I want to talk to, or one of the people that I want to talk to when I get to heaven. Obviously, there's females as well, but Ezekiel is one of the men in the Bible that I'm like, one of the prophets that I'm like, what? How did that feel? Like, what was going through your head when you were asked to do these things? So let's talk about some of those things. For starters, God asks Ezekiel to lay down, and maybe at night or during a time of rest during the day. I'm not sure exactly the whole scope of it, but he had to lay down on his left side for 390 days. And then he had to switch to his right side for another 40. Now, obviously, he got up and he, wasn't necessarily laying down that whole time, I wouldn't believe, but that was like his specific instructions. You lay down, and on this side, you're going to lay down for this many days. And then there is the subject of food. So some of it had to actually be cooked over cow dung. I mean, like, what? So when he was cooking his meals, it had to be cooked over cow dung, which is absolutely gross. I'm like, what in the world? Another wild thing that God asked of Ezekiel was for him to shave his head and beard, which was really anti the culture. If I'm understanding all of the scripture, there was kind of an honor of how long your beard was. And then once he was asked to shave his head and beard, he then was told to divide the hair into 3 parts and then disperse it. And the first part that Ezekiel had to do was put that part of his hair under fire. And then the second part of his hair he dispersed throughout the city. And then the last part he scattered in the wind. He also attaches a few of his hairs to the edge of his robes, and each of these acts are symbolizing a message that God wanted the Israelites to hear and to understand. And obviously, he's a prophet, so he's delivering these messages. Well, coupled with what we deem as odd acts, Ezekiel was also told to prophesy and to tell the people their fate due to their disobedience. So I'm pretty sure that most people questioned Ezekiel's sanity. In fact, I would guess that they would. Now I can't be like 100% confident of that, but I'm pretty sure that they probably questioned his sanity. I'm also probably pretty sure that most of the people would even probably try and distance themselves from him and probably called him names like freak. I can't imagine some of the things that he endured while doing these things, and the looks and the conversation pieces that were going on when he was in this time frame. But they were honestly in a very deep state of rebellion. So whatever Ezekiel was asked to do, they were going to think was strange, right? Even prophesying, which is who he was a prophet, but they were just in a very deep state of rebellion, and God was doing things outside of the box. He was trying to get their attention through these radical acts that he was asking Ezekiel to do. You know, sometimes God must get radical to warn us. And he used Ezekiel with those radical messages to do this. God wanted to make it very clear to the people that he is the one true God. He wanted the people to know him and to hear his voice through Ezekiel. Yes, these acts of Ezekiel seem very extreme, weird. I'm not denying any of that. I'm not a Bible scholar, so I'm not symbolizing all of these actions. And I know pastors who know what all of the symbolism means and the reasons why he was asked, or maybe doing a deep dive into Ezekiel. I am not a Bible scholar in the sense of I'm not going to list like all the things that he was asked to do and why per se. But I'm confident that there's pastors out there that know it. So if you are interested in learning about some of these acts that Ezekiel did and some of the behaviors that he was asked to do, it might be a good futuristic study, a deep dive into it. And who knows, maybe I will do that as well. But the question for us is, would we do something weird or what other people might deem as extreme if God asked us to do that? Are we willing to be a Jesus freak? And I don't get this as much anymore, but I did get it when I was in high school. When I was in high school, people knew me, and I actually had a nickname, and the nickname in high school was Goody Goody Two Shoes. If ever any of my high school friends listen to this podcast or watch me online, they're going to say, yep, I called her that, because pretty much all of my friends labeled me as Goody Goody Two Shoes. And this was all through high school. And what was really interesting is that we would be in situations where peer pressure would come to me, and I would have to make a decision. And they obviously, in that moment, in that season, in our age group, they thought that I was weird. They thought that I was really extreme. And they, in their own terms, would probably call me a Jesus freak. Yes, there were times where I failed, but for the most part, I was pretty straight and narrow in high school, and even to the point where I did not curse or any of that. I was pretty, I would even correct my friends and say, would you please not say that in front of me? And so I understand. I've been in situations like that where people would think that how I was behaving was weird or extreme or even a Jesus freak. And, I wonder if you've ever felt that way. So let's talk about today's challenge to dig deeper. You may never have to cook over cow dung. You may never have to cut your hair and spread it across your city or release it in the wind. But digging deeper may mean being bold or being bolder and different than the people that you are around. It may just be as simple as that. Our challenge may be to say, I'm going to be bolder and remain different. And so today, I want you to just dig a little deeper and challenge yourself to do one thing in an area where you might be a little timid that requires a little more boldness. You may already know what that one thing is, but if you don't, just pray and ask God to help you. Ask God to help you with giving you what the one thing is that He wants you to do that may be requiring a little bit more boldness or different than how your personality responds to life in general. But pray and ask God what that one thing is and do that one thing that requires just a little more boldness. Maybe you have somebody in your life that is not yet saved. Maybe it's a relative. Maybe it's a really close friend who you confide in a lot, but they're just not on the same faith journey as you. And maybe you've had opportunities in the past to, have a conversation with them about faith, and you just have passed that aside and you haven't done it. Well, today's your day, maybe, if you accept this challenge, to call them and say, hey, I really want to pray for you. Is there anything at all in your life that I can pray for you about? And open the door for an opportunity to pray for this person. That's just one example. Maybe another example is you've never really been a social media faith person. Maybe people know you personally that know your faith, but you've never actually professed it online or to people who follow you. Maybe today is that day where you actually step out and share something. Maybe your testimony. Maybe you've never actually shared some of your testimony with people. Maybe that's an act of boldness. I don't know what it is, but I would like for you to be challenged today to do that one thing that you haven't done that requires a little bit of boldness. And so tonight, when you are pulling out your journal and you're reflecting on how you spent your day and what challenges you had and what you did in the challenge, I want you to write down what your one thing was. What was that one thing that you did that was requiring you to be a little more bold? Was it hard? Did you finish doing the one thing and then go, oh, you know what? I actually feel really good. I'm so happy. I'm proud of myself for doing this. Write down how it made you feel. If you don't have my Rinse, Reflect, Repeat journal, it's got all these challenges in it. It's got the featured verse and the challenge, and it's got all kinds of lines where you can write down what you did. So make sure that you date it, because in the futuristic, if in a couple years from now you pull out the journal and want to read some entries into it, it's such a great way to read and to see your growth. So I hope today encouraged you that just as Ezekiel had to make his choices based on who he was, I encourage you to just be a little more bold today. And if you don't have my full devotional, go ahead and order it online. My link is in the show notes, as well as the link to get the journal if you want that as well. And go ahead and join the Rinse, Reflect, Repeat Facebook group. And I would love for you to come on there and write your experiences and write down some of the things that you've gleaned from this devotional and walking through the Bible alphabetically. And until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.